Okay, so in this video I want to talk about the anatomy of a C++ application created in the Visual Studio. Basically, I drew this picture here. This is your code. Okay, let's say this is your homework assignment and you hit that run button. What happens when you hit that run button? We talked about the compiler is going to compile that code or translate that code into machine language, which is basically called object code. That's kind of like an intermediate step in the whole process. So at that point, a component called the linker is going to grab any library code that you wanted to check out. So for example, the library code files for the cout stream object that we talked about. And it'll grab that code and link it to your object code, and the result of that is an executable file, or a file with an exe extension. And so when you're running your program and you see the console window with your output, the little black window, that's actually the executable file running in memory. That's the result of your compiled program, and that it's your program that you're actually interacting with as you test it. So with that in mind, let's look at some of the files. A lot of files are generated in this process. So this is, I'm not in the Visual Studio right now, but this is the folder. When I created that project, I put it on the desktop. It all goes into a nice little folder, and let's look inside this folder and see. I mean, there's lots of stuff in here, lots of files. I'm going to tell you what's important and what's not. So first and foremost, the most important file is the CPP file, or the file with your C++ code in it. It's in, you have to drill down into the second folder. It's going to have the same name as the project, and there it is, the CPP extension. Oh, and by the way, you've got to have your system set up so that you actually see file extensions. In the default in Windows, you might not see those, and here's how you do it. You would go to the, like I'm in the File Explorer window, go to View, and then you need to have this checked, File Name Extensions. You must see file extensions in this class, okay? So in any case, this is by far the most important file. So when you're submitting a homework assignment, this is what I'm going to want, that CPP file, okay? And, okay, so that is the most important file, and it's really the only one you truly have to worry about. I'm going to mention a couple of others that are useful. For example, now I'm back up one level, the SLN file. That is a solution file. And if you want to reopen, like let's say I want to open that project again and run the code, I would open it by the solution file. That's an important point here. Always open your project by the solution file. So I'll go ahead and double click that to open it up. And here's the Visual Studio opening up. And the solution file is going to remember exactly where I was when I left off, and it'll open up my project with the code file. Okay, while I'm waiting for that to load, I'm going to drill down into the debug folder. This is the executable. You know, remember the picture that I showed you of the executable file? That's the result of the whole process. When you go and compile your application and run it, the result is an executable file. And there it is, the exe file, just so you know. I mean, all of these can be regenerated with a few mouse clicks, except that CPP file, which you want to guard with your life, because that is the file that contains your code, all your hard work, and if you lose it or you accidentally delete it, then all your hard work is gone. So that is by far the most important. The rest of these, we don't even have to talk about. But okay, so one more thing here. I am going to, so I opened the solution file, the SLN file, and everything just kind of fell into place. One thing I want to point out. Okay, I'm going to close up the Visual Studio again, and let's say by accident, I want to, you know what, I think I'm going to plop my homework file on the desktop. Okay, so now it's no longer in that folder. It's loose out on the desktop, my code file. Okay, let's say I'm going to submit it for homework or something, and I wanted it to be handy, and there it is. And then you're like, oh, I just want to run it one more time and make sure it works. And then I go ahead and open it. I double click that code file. I want to open it in the Visual Studio. So here the file is opened up in the Visual Studio. Right away, a red flag is going off because I'm not seeing my Solution Explorer. Okay, fine, I'm going to try to run it one last time before I submit the homework, and then I click this, and what the heck is this? Okay, what's going on here is this is just the CPP file. You can't just run a CPP file. It has to be part of a solution. It has to be part of a project. You can't just open up a CPP file loose like I did and expect it to run. It's got to be part of the bigger picture here. So what I can do, I'll show you. If you want to run an existing CPP file, maybe I give you a code file as a demo, or maybe it's one of the programs in the book. What you would have to do is create a project first, or open up a project, and then add that file as an existing file. So let me, I'll go ahead and close that up. So what I'll do is, like I told you before, I'll open up the solution by the SLN file. Okay, so this is the solution open up in the Visual Studio, and then notice here it still thinks that that code file is in there. Do you remember I moved that code file out of the folder? It's loose out on the desktop. So if I try to open the code file, it's saying, hey, wait a minute, we can't find this. It's because I moved it, all right? That's fine. What I'll do is I'm going to remove that reference to that file, okay, because it was an old garbage link to that file. And now I'm going to add that code file to the solution, and then it'll run because it's part of a bigger solution. I'm going to add, typically we add a new item when we're starting something new, but in this case I'm adding an existing item. So then I can browse for that file on the desktop. There it is. Now the existing code file has been added to a solution, and I can run it, and it'll just run normally like any other application. Okay, so the point of this video, the main takeaways from this video are that that CPP file is the file with your code in it, and that is the most important file, hands down. And then the second thing I want you to remember is that you can't just run a CPP file by itself. It's got to be part of a solution. So you have to add that to an existing solution. Unless you're starting from scratch, then you'll kind of take care of all the steps at once and you don't have to worry about it.